Hello, guys, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of Power Chats. My name is Paul, and I am your host today. We're going to be talking about the decolonization of education. And when I say this already, I was expecting in my head to be around educators only. But quite interesting, today we have got a very intriguing panel who is ready. The panel is just ready to come in and break this wall and demystify. So we have a panel all the way from Nigeria, Harare, and East London, South Africa. Guys, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to a minute each just to introduce yourselves.
Okay, thank you. My name is Hawal from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm a public speaker, human resources practitioner, and a personal development coach, basically. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a civil engineering technician and I love to travel. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Anile Dotto. I'm a lecturer at the University of Forte. So I'm very happy that I'm part of the conversation in this platform today. Thank you.
Awesome. And like I just said when I was kickstarting the show, this is a very heavy panel. And what interests me right now is we could have gone all out and get a panel of educators, and right now we have technicians and civil engineers and lecturers as well. This helps us cover a bigger spectrum of the education system. I think to start off, I want to direct this to Anele just to help us understand the significance of an education system without even decolonizing it. What role an education system plays in building a society and building the economies of the society.
For that question, my thinking about that question is that, firstly, education is important for a number of reasons, and one of that reason is to help us to think about what kind of society we want to be. So with an education system that is able to think and prepare its citizens to be more conscious about what can we create about our society. So when we talk about education, we must think about education that is helping us to think more deeper about what kind of citizenship we want to create, what kind of society we want to become. And we must do that in 3 dimensions. One, we must be able to think about, our own historical sense, what is our history? So when we talk about education, we must be able to think about in such a way that we are more conscious about our own histories as people of Africa, South Africa, our culture. So we must be thinking about education that is always not divorced from those things. So that's how I think we have to think about the role of education to prepare its citizenship, to think about what type of society we seek to become and what is our contribution in that society. So that's what I'm thinking about. Thank you.
All right, Anele, I'm going to come back to you with that because you mentioned when you started speaking that it's a threefold, and you mentioned the historical aspect of it. I'm sure there's 2 more, and the way you're bringing it out, I feel like I have to revert back to you in a couple of minutes, back onto the same question. But before I do that, someone already posted on our social media here and says, "What is it? What do you mean by decolonizing?" which is a very interesting fact. Anyone wants to tackle that question?
Yes, basically, I would like to take that part. Decolonizing, not quoting any dictionary or a textbook now. From the layman perspective, decolonizing is simply the appraising the values, the beliefs, the cultures that were instilled by the colonial masters in Africa. You appraise these values and beliefs, and you see as those that are beneficial to us, and you adopt those words, and you can discard whichever that are not beneficial or that are not in line with our culture, our perspective as Africans. So in summary, that is decolonizing to me. So I'm sure sister can say something else to that.
Hi,
I think when we
okay, go on, Anele.
no, go on. Sorry for that.
I think I'll
all
speak
right.
after you.
Okay. So I think decolonizing of our education system is like we are like what Hawa has said. It's like we are taking what's good for us and we improve on some of the things that are already in our system. We improve them and modify them to suit our needs at the moment, because like the times are changing. So for us to continue with the systems that were put in place maybe in the 70s or in the 80s, it's
go
now
and see.
some
Let's
of
go
them
in.
they are no more applicable, and some of them need improvement. So I think there's when we are saying let's decolonize our education, it's like we are saying let's improve on things that are relevant and things that are for the betterment of Africa. Thank you.
And in addition to that, if I may come in, sorry, in addition to that, if I may come in, looking at the educational aspect, most of the facts, or should I say values in the educational system that were instilled by the colonial masters have moved beyond that. For example, if you come to some educational sector, even in the higher educational or the tertiary institutions, we still focus on draw a grasshopper and label. Whereas the colonial masters have moved beyond that. They are now into developing crone, artificial intelligence, and yet we as Africans, we are still
still labeling the locusts.
Exactly. And I mean, so it's enough reason for decolonization, taking what is valuable and discarding those which are archaic already. Thank you.
For me, when we want to talk about decolonization, for me, I think it's a political mission, a political position, because of we are cognizant of what the Western worldview and what we call epistemological tradition of education. You know, we want to really think about, you know, because if we look into our education system currently, we know that, you know, our education system is heavily influenced by the the European ideas about education. When we talk about decolonization, we want to talk about decolonization in such a way that it brings in our own values, our own traditions in our education system. So our way of learning about stuff should find expression in the curriculum development. We want to privilege our own way of doing things. Our own thinking must find expression in the curriculum, because the current curriculum is really remain largely, Eurocentric. And it means, therefore, what we learn and what we have to understand about education is largely privileging the Western ideas about education. So when we talk about decolonization, we seek to think about it in such a way that we want to bring our own ideas about education. So it means, therefore, as African people, we got to think about what kind of curriculum are we designing, what kind of education we seek to have. So we want to move away from a Western worldview of education by privileging African epistemological traditions of education. That's what we are talking about. And we are aware, so it's a political mission to privilege African epistemological, ontological methodologies of education so that we could be able to take ownership of what we learn as African people. So that's what we talk about when we talk about decolonization. We want to move away from Western, traditions of education. Thank you.
I think what you're saying, Anele, just to come in quickly, is very significant because I was reading some place else. The what you're talking about when it comes to epistemology bodies and bodies of knowledge that are being circulated and used in Africa, and especially South African universities, how they are still enshrined in the same systems that were designed through apartheid and racism. So you find that while we are trying to correct uh, the ills of the past, we cannot then move forward and shape a society while we're using a system that was designed to repress and suppress a certain population group. Come on, guys, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Okay,
Um,
so I think what Anele has said, it's very profound because like now I think we might call it a political move because it's like it is the responsibility maybe of the leadership to look into that and see that, okay, so this is what we have had for a very long time. So what do we need to change? What do we need to improve? Is it still working for us? Is it still helping us? Do we still need do we still need it or not? Then after that realization, then there is need now to put in place those boards and whatever to restructure our education, because as it is now, I'm sure we all agree that, okay, there are some things that we don't need anymore. There are some things that are not working for us anymore. So yeah, there is really a need for Africa to do something about our education.
I think I think what we miss out sometimes when we think of decolonization of education is we normally just box it into a political move where we think this is politically correct to fix the ills of the past. There's something called epistemic violence that comes with the old education system. And when we talk of epistemic violence, what we're generally talking about is the idea that other, like Anele mentioned earlier, other bodies of knowledge become suppressed and rejected. And then we start, by so doing, we're already starting exalting other bodies of knowledge, mostly Eurocentric bodies. We grew up reading the conquests of Europe, European conquests and American conquests, and already in our mind, it sort of communicates to us that we are second-class citizens of the world, and Europe is the correct class or the first class or the first citizens of the world. So already, when we get into engagement after having been through this system, we're already viewing ourselves in light of the information that has already been downloaded into us as second class citizens. You find yourself in your workplace, and you are trying to do an overhaul of a system that brought you up. So there's a part of you already that rejects what you're trying to fight for. There's a part of you that morally and normally rejects either standing up against misogyny, standing up against male dominance, standing up. Because if you look at the epistemic violence I just mentioned earlier, it comes with male dominance, it comes with Eurocentrism, it comes with white superiority, it comes with a whole lot of ills that take away from the African context our own uniqueness and our own abilities as academics to bring out bodies of knowledge. You realize right now that if you're reading a paper, an academic paper, or a book on a very sensitive topic, let's just say medicine, and it's written, the author is an African man, you take it with a pinch of salt. But if the guy has got an Italian name and some Latin name, you are willing to take that information without due diligence and research. You're like, these are the people who own the world of knowledge. I'm going to throw this to anyone else who wants to jump in. I know Anele is very passionate as a leader in the youth structures of this country as well. I am sure you have been on platforms and forums. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. But I'm sure in some way, one way or the other, if you've been in an academic institution of higher learning, you would have faced this dilemma where you actually look at what you're going through and what you're studying, and you feel like there's something missing. But then still, a part of you still tries to communicate sanity back to you.
Okay, let me quickly take this before Anneli comes in. Paul, talking about the perspective of being a second-class citizen or seeing the white as the supremacist, it's come from the fact that even in our education curriculum, the personalities that are being studied, we have the likes of the Aristotle, the Socrates. Why don't we study the African giants? We have other African personalities that we can pay attention to, even right from the smallest cadre of education before the tertiary level. But then our educational system focuses on the European personalities. And this, as a matter of fact, instill in us, even right from childhood, that they are supreme to us. Then aside from that, you agree with me that we have, to me, in my opinion, they are misleading facts. For example, the discovery of River Niger, it is published and well known that it was discovered by Mungo Park in 1805. But we all know that the River Niger flown down from, sorry, Estina, I forgot the name of this mountain, but it has been in existence since the inception of creation, forever.
Yeah.
And it's a well-known fact that we have Black people who have been living there even right before Mungo Park got there. But it's a misleading fact in our educational system that Mungo Park discovered the River Niger. So we have so many other examples that we can trace this to. So these are the misleading facts we have in our educational system that instill this belief in us that we are second-class people, or we are not good. We are. I hope my point is understood. Thank you.
That is actually very important. I really think that we need to replace, like, for instead of us to continue talking about white supremacy and what, like, here in Zimbabwe we have the Victoria Falls and we have Matopos, but those places, it's like they were already there, but right now when they are being advertised out there, they will be saying, oh, okay, Livingstone discovered that place, Livingstone did this and that, but we were already there, we were already experiencing the mighty Victoria Falls. We didn't, it's just that maybe our I wouldn't want to say it's our era, because I would like to believe that Africa was developing at its own pace, and we're going to document those things at our own pace, right? That is what I believe in. And we were going to write about it, or we were going to make noise about it at our own time. We did not need anyone from out there to come and tell us that, okay, this is the Victoria Falls, this is the baobab tree, this is the what, this is the what. And also, I have actually a problem with like in the medical sector, like we in Africa we have our roots, we have our leaves, trees, and what that have got medicinal values. But then we sort of we are, I think there's been a brainwash to say, okay, your stuff don't, they don't matter, they don't work. And then the West, they came and then they took our own roots, they went to develop them, they went to do research on them, and they found that they are useful, and now they are selling them back to us as drugs, right? But that does not make sense to me. Like,
I think what you're
why?
essentially talking about, see,
Yes, go on.
yeah. I'm just saying, essentially, what you're talking about is what we've been fighting our whole lives as young academics to really understand. You talk of minerals that leave Africa and then come processed at a higher price.
Yes,
There's a lot of
yes.
things that are irregular, and when we sit here, I want to come back and harness the idea of epistemic violence, where our schools of thought are completely rejected and thrown out of the window. Because interestingly, we had one of our first shows on Baobab Chats, our season one. We spoke about COVID-19 vaccines when in Madagascar there had been rumored that there's something coming out from Madagascar, but it's plant-based. And already the United Nations as a body rejected it, and World Health Organization as a body rejected it. And we were like,
Yes.
didn't they owe it to the world of knowledge to come
Mhm.
in, set up properly in there, investigate, do thorough research, whatever needs to be done, whatever has been done, for lack of a better example, for Pfizer, when they came up with the COVID-19 vaccine, wouldn't it be able to be done for Madagascar and whoever was blowing that trumpet? But essentially,
Mhm.
what we're all trying to come up with is that the idea of epistemic violence suggests that our bodies of knowledge are looked down on. And this
Yes.
is exactly what Awao was saying when we have history legends out there. I was schooling someone about the likes of Jaja of Opobo and Nana of Isekiriland, who we don't really hear about, but were men of renown, and they did great exploits here in Africa. We've got the likes of your Samori Torre just recently here in South Africa. King Goodwill Zwelithini Zuma, King Goodwill passed away, who was the Zulu king, and nothing has been said out there by the world of information. But if a European son and the European daughter-in-law, I mean the queen's
Mhm.
grandson, had a fight with, it was a family drama, so to speak, and the whole
Exactly.
world shook.
Mhm.
And here we've got one of the longest standing monarchies in Africa lose its king, and nothing happens. And this is why we're here as Baobab, just to say, can we talk about these things and find out what an individual can do? What's your role as an individual? And I'm going to throw it out in this way. As an individual, before we even talk about what institutions have to do, and primary school, high schools, and higher tertiary places of learning have to do, as an individual, what can you do to play your part in decolonization of education?
uh, what I think should do, or I must do as an individual, is first of all to embrace my Africanism, to embrace my Zimbabweanism. Like, I'm a Zimbabwean. There are some cultures that I need to embrace. For example, for starters, the language. I'm Shona, and we have many other languages here in Zimbabwe, but then in our schools we learned only Shona, and I don't know why we did that. We have Ndebele, we have Tonga, we have Venda, but we never learned those languages in school. And I really uh, wonder why. We need to start from there. I mean, I need to start learning other people's, other tribes' languages. I need to learn Ndebele. I need to learn, so that when I go to Binga, I can talk to them in their language. Or if I go to
Native
Siavonga,
tongue.
I can be able to talk to them in Tonga, right? And also, I need, when I'm raising my kids, because these days we have Like it's a general thing that, okay, I need to take my kid to an English speaking preschool. I just need my kids to learn English, and they speak English in their house. Like you visit and you find that everyone is talking is using English as a communication language. Now that is where we need to start. We need to start by embracing what we have. We embrace our culture, we embrace our religion, we embrace everything that defines us. We start from there. Then we can start talking about, okay,
Someone,
yeah, you
someone
go
is
on.
actually saying to you, see there, that some people in Zima are actually studying French and Mandarin, and they're neglecting their own native languages. And I mean, I don't
Exactly,
want to
yes.
sound like I'm overheating this drum. But what I also see there is that some of these languages, the people responsible for this language, the native people of these languages, have attached a value to their language. There's some sort of currency that is attached to a language. If you look at the Chinese, Mandarin is coming with the economy of China. So people are being forced to learn the language because the language comes with it, with the money of the language. And I think this is where we lag behind as Africans, where, in my opinion, all right, let me not preempt my opinion quickly. How I saw you were
Okay.
eager to come in there.
Yes, yes. For me, excuse me, I think we Africans, we are confused in being African and wanting to be a perfect Englishman. So I think that is where the problem is coming from. We are not proud of our heritage. We are not proud of our historical values. So we are in between. We want to be African and at the same time we want to be the perfect Englishman. And so this confusion is what is actually making the gap wider. And you would also agree with me that in another perspective to that is, I'm trying to link it to something that we can all relate with. Aside from the fact that we are
Relate with.
confused, and yes, aside from the fact that we don't want to be African, we are not. Then is are Africans supporting Africans adequately? You come as an African, you come up with an ideology, you come up with ideas, and a fellow African is telling you, "Oh, it's coming from a black man; it's not going to work." An African produce, like C was talking about, produce medicine from roots and herbs, and a fellow African is telling you, oh, I can't use this, I'd rather use the white medicine. So we are not supporting Africa. Yes, we are fighting for Africa to be more developed, and we are fighting to discover ourselves, but the basic truth is that we are not supporting each other to achieve this, and that is where the disparity is coming from, basically. So that's my point of view.
That is
I'm
very
so
true.
disappointed because, go on, see, go on.
Oh, okay. I wanted to just agree with what Hawa was saying. That is very important. In as much as we are trying to be our own selves as Africans, there's like another part of us again that wants us to be that perfect English person. Maybe it's like a matter of wanting to fit in, right? But we are forgetting one thing. The reason why those people, they seem superior, or they render themselves superior than us, is because we have taken ourselves for granted. We have not, after, okay, we have all gained our independence, right? But after gaining that independence, we have tried to run back and copy what they were doing and what their values and everything. But we have not tried to elevate ourselves, to put ourselves up there, out there, to compete with them. Or, okay, maybe not to compete, but to just try to elevate ourselves and make sure that we are sitting on those seats where everyone, when they look at us, they would admire, to say, oh, wow, those Africans are doing well. Those Africans are, because if you can check, in our Africa has got so many resources. Like there's this lady I actually just followed her, and she was talking about, she's from Ethiopia, and she was talking about Ethiopia being the 8th largest producer of livestock, and then they export those hides, the skins, the animal skins. They export them, and then after exporting them, those Western countries, they make bags and everything, and then they sell back. They add value, and now they sell those bags to us at a very exorbitant price, which means we are getting the short-ended. We are short-changing ourselves, right? But why is it like that? It is because when we have our resources, we are not supporting each other. We are not what I'm trying to bring about is we are not
All right, let me come in there. See.
Okay.
Let me come in there quickly, because I have something that a good friend of mine, Jason Gabriel, just posted as a question when he says, many spotlight the ills and imbalance of equality on social media, which is known to the oppressed. What it essentially means is that whoever is doing this to us, welcome. Sten just joined us. I'm so sure your hooves are burning and you're itching to throw in some jabs there. But before you do that, quickly, Sten, Jason put up something and says, many spotlight the ills and imbalances of equality on social media, which is not to the oppressed. However, in reality, only a few are willing to hear the cry for help. Sten, you just came in and you're still fresh. I'm going to throw something at you right now. You have been in different places of higher learning. And this now, I want to turn our conversation onto an institutionalized level, policy development and implementation. Because now, if you look at higher tertiary level, especially here in South Africa, after apartheid, a lot of these places of higher learning were forced or prompted to change their policies and make their policies public on how they're going to transform over a certain period of time the universities and technicons and all these other places of higher learning to be able to adjust to fit the new society that has been created. And I feel there's been a little bit of progress, but I want to hear from you, Stan. What is your overall thought on the role of the institutions in playing a part to bring the decolonization of education? We can't hear you.
Is muted.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. It was so hot out there, so I had to also jump in. Okay, but yeah, Annelies' connection was going very bad, and he couldn't continue with the conversation. But in terms of institutions of higher learning, a lot of institutions have done a lot in terms of trying to balance the numbers, with quotas, trying to get more Black students, more African students in the institutions of higher learning. But little to nothing has been done in terms of changing the content that people are studying. So in terms of the knowledge sharing ways, like I don't know of an African institution of higher learning that is now studying a course full on from start to finish, 3 years in a vernacular language. I don't know if maybe one of us knows something, but I think we are in the 60th year of independence in Africa. The African Union has been in existence, for so many years. So the question becomes, how do you, it's not necessarily like the question that Yako is asking. It's not necessarily revising the syllabus to include a more African history, but it's about how do you make the education accessible? How do you make the knowledge useful? So if you go to people that are used to building certain types of buildings, and they go to study architecture coming from the raw area, all they study is Roman Dutch architecture. There's no knowledge ahead, I think, is it C, who is a civil engineer. There's no knowledge about the civil engineering methods which are African. We used to build bridges and harvest water and energy and purify metals before colonization. So that, yes, changing the syllabus is part of it. But how do you even make the education accessible? A person coming, if you go to most of these institutions of higher learning, coming from the rural areas, what happens is a lot struggle to pass first year, just because the knowledge that they are getting educated into, it's just they can't relate. There's fundamental difference to what they know, what they've been exposed to, and it's like all the knowledge they've gathered throughout their life to this stage is not useful at all. But that knowledge is useful because ages and ages of people have survived based on that knowledge. Yeah.
I am going to ask our production team to just put back a question that was thrown out by Yako there, where he was asking it's a previous question before this, because I felt, there you go. Thank you very much. It says, a question, does decolonizing education mean simply revising syllabuses to include more African history and acknowledgement of African accomplishments, or does it mean something more fundamental? And I just want to say the first part is also fundamental, just being inclusive of Africans' the part we play as Africans in the shaping of the modern day world. We played a huge part. Stan is talking about civil engineering per se. The role the Egyptian guys played a part in developing the numbers we're using today and the systems we're using today is fundamental. And just neglecting it is something that is just something to cheer us up, is the reason why sometimes we are here racially. But institutionally, fundamentally also, you must understand that we are talking of different bodies of knowledge. And we didn't know about this when we were younger, but when we grew older, we realized there is a Russian school of thought. The Russians think in a different way. The Chinese think in a different way. But we have been groomed to think in a Eurocentric way, and our bodies of knowledge that we grew up with only support Eurocentrism, which is wrong. The world is not European. I mean, Yako, you can agree with me and everybody else who has a question in their head. The world is not European. So what we're saying is fundamentally, as you said, we want inclusiveness. And also fundamentally, we want the access, the ability to put and play our part now to bring in bodies of knowledge. And the simple example was given of the COVID-19 from Madagascar. That was a discovery from an African perspective in Africa that could be well tailored and developed into the future that we want. I don't want to preempt my thoughts here. More questions are coming. Guys, feel free to engage these questions in your conversation as we go on.
So can I just make a sad comment there, Paul? That, you know, we also love people like Yaku. I know Yaku is a very fine musician, right? And one of the questions one can put, you know, back to Yaku, for example, is as a musician, he's a great musician who has studied music at very various levels. And part of the question becomes, to what extent is African music appreciated when people get awards or recognizing music signatures and things like that, you know? That appreciation, because if a student, I go back, who's coming from Gqeberha, maybe the rural part of Gqeberha, I don't know if it has got a rural part, and they arrive at university to study music, what recognition, when they're asked to bring a portfolio or something like that, what recognition is there of the knowledge that they have? Is this knowledge acceptable at all or not? You know, yeah.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I'm going to come to you a while before I do that. This in itself, the fact that we can be able to sit down and engage this conversation, this is a very sensitive conversation. I was saying this behind the screens before we got live with the guys, that we're going to be forced to discuss politics here, even though we didn't want to. And we're going to be forced to talk about racial superiority, white supremacy, Eurocentrism, and racism per se. I read an academic paper that was obviously written by a white person, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I appreciated on that paper is that the man was actually acknowledging the role of the institutions and policy making in trying to move towards transformation. He, however, notes that, and this is where it gets tricky, there are certain people with power in those institutions who will stand in the place of implementation of those policies. And there is nothing the government has actually been able to do to come in and force at an institution of higher learning policy change. Policies are there on paper. Policy can be read. We can narrate and recite them. But there is a group and organizations and individuals who are benefiting from the current system and the way it was designed. I'll give a simple example. Most universities that were teaching Bantu education here, they're still there here now in South Africa, but they've just been given fancier names. They are just there to teach people to be subservient servants of the society. And then access to those places is very easy. And then you are talking about artificial intelligence, how and how the world has moved on. There are still places like that here in Africa, here in South Africa. I'm sure you have there in Nigeria and in Zimbabwe as well, and in Australia still. But you'll find that access for Africans, access for people who are coming from a disadvantaged background, to get access into those places where knowledge is thoroughly refined and is moving with the times is hard. We keep coming back. I did climatology, and you find that when I was studying climatology, we were studying European weather systems. And like Stan accurately mentions, it doesn't really help me as an African to move Africa forward if all of us in a climatology class are learning European climates. Now we get a weather hazard. We don't even know how to interpret it. We're just focused on weather patterns that have got nothing to do with where we're even staying. We're not saying we can't learn other people's weather patterns, but why can we not say, let's embrace what is ours and then we'll move forward? I'll come in.
Thank you very much, Paul. Like you mentioned initially, this discussion is very sensitive, and whether we like it or not, we must also discuss the part that it is political. Political in the sense that even our leaders are most times the stumbling block for Africans to gain access to some of these things. And here in Nigeria, basically, I will cite an example. The racial supremacy. A white-colored man is given preferential treatment in having access to even the basic things. And then this is where the blacks who are custodian of these things do not have access to it, because even our leaders give more preferential treatment to the whites. And I'll give you an example. We have some research laboratories in some universities here that are not, students don't have access to it. But when they see a white man, they say, oh, please, can I carry out some research here? Can I do certain things there? The white man is being given instant access because he's a white man. And you can see that we support the racial supremacy ourselves. So most times, ourselves and our leaders are the stumbling block in achieving this. And that's where the political part comes in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul, I'd like to share something. Okay, maybe I'll let you go, Asi. Sorry.
Go for it. Go for it.
What I wanted to say is these leaders, okay, I think the reason why they are like that is also emanates from the kind of education that they received, because they still feel inferior. They still think that they are inferior, right? So now when they get or when they are on those positions, they don't see the need. Like they are not, their eyes are still closed. They need that revelation to say, okay, there has to be a change, right? Because why would they withhold, or why would they keep blacks out of research laboratories? Because when the blacks after they do that research, they will now be the ones to supply the information and make things move forward, right? But now, because they still feel inferior, they still believe that the white man has to give us something, the white man has to provide. That is that mentality we are trying to say, okay, let's decolonize, let's sanitize our mind, let's sanitize our brain to think that no, this thing that they can do, we can also do it, and we can even do it better, for that matter. Thank you.
I'm sorry. In addition, please, I stand to be corrected though, but here in Nigeria, it is very difficult for a white man who commits a crime to be arrested.
But Paul, I want
disappointing.
to jump in. Yeah, I I want to jump in with something here because I think this is a very difficult conversation, right? But there's something that we need to be cognizant and to be careful of confusing race with Africanness. So Africanness doesn't necessarily mean having more melanin than the other. So you can find Africanness being displayed in more ways than just the color of the skin. And when we start to confront the issue of decolonizing education, for example, I want to come to the point where Paul earlier, where you said, yeah, a paper, you know, it was written, yes, by a white person, whatever. In my perspective, that starting point is of no value, in the sense that when we talk about decolonization of Africa and the mindset, we have white people that have driven the African agenda. We have white people that stood with our forefathers in the wars. So we must not confuse race and Africanness. I want to come to, for example, a country like Zimbabwe, where majority of the institutions of higher learning, they're actually led from top to bottom by Africans, Black Africans. So when you come into that institution, from the minister of the education, from the president up unto the lecturer at the university and the researcher, they're all Black people. But we are talking about decolonization. That institution is still not decolonized. So it's more structural than just the face that you're looking at. And we must then position ourselves in a way whereby the color and the pigment of our skin does not confuse us. Last example, earlier today, I went with my wife to a salon, right? And it's a Black people salon here in Australia. And what happened was there's this lady came in, a white lady, came in with her daughter and to do braids on her hair, you know, very funny. And then as we are talking and stuff, so one of the ladies asked this lady, where are you from? Then she says, I'm American, but I was born in Kenya. Then the other lady said, oh, this lady sitting here is from Kenya. She said, oh, is it? Then she started speaking in Kiswahili to this lady. That lady showed Africanness more than majority of Africans that you would have never met, who do not ever take an intention to learn a language that they don't speak at all, to value that language. So I'm just saying we must not confuse Africanness and Blackness as well as we continue with the conversation. This is just my perspective.
Okay. my privileges are very insurmountable. So I'm going to come in the first half of this response as the matrix, neo the matrix, and intentionally dodge your first preposition to what I said. Having done that, your points are very valid and also exclusive. And I want to say they're exclusive to you because of the person that you are, and I understand the vast experience that you've had in the academic world. And your correct citing is the situation in Zim, where the whole system is being run by local natives, and they are failing to force that transformation, not only in the change of content that is to be studied, but understand the content that people study is equally important. It is so important, and my argument with that is that Eurocentrism was intentionally imposed on us so that we become what we were for the amount of almost a century long servitude, and it was designed to sustain that. You cannot try to correct the communities. I wish Anila was here because he introduced something when we studied that the education system actually helps us shape the kind of community we want to live in. But so that I don't take everybody astray and become too political, it's so also important to understand you cannot separate this from race. The politics of race and the politics of the economy are intertwined in the education system. And there is a lot that can be gained. And I think one of the things that people fear is also there is a lot that can be lost while we're moving for transformation. You gain some, you win some, but we're going to have to sit as Africans and say, let's be prepared to take some of these losses, because losses will come. I saw that with transformation in terms of land in Zim. The transformation was good. I would say from my perspective, we have people now who own land, who are natives. but the consequences, there were also bad consequences with it. So you must be able to take it with the losses as well. If we come in and we say we want to transform the education system, we want to decolonize the education system. What we're simply saying is we want to take out the things that were meant to suppress us, the things that were meant to make us look down on ourselves. We want to take out the things that don't benefit us. I remember when I was in a primary school, I was a club scout, and I was saying, God bless the Queen. And I'm in Africa, and I was not talking about the African Queen for that matter. That's a wrong system altogether. And we still need to have those Cub Scouts. We still have to have that policing at that young age. But probably saying God bless kings from wherever kingdom we are, from the Matopos kingdom, if I may add that. What we cannot refuse is we need to pull down some structures.
I just wanted to say, sorry, Paul. I just wanted to say, and that Queen has been blessed. She's been the longest reigning monarchy in the world.
Because everyone has been praying for her.
They say
Everyone's been praying.
And can I
want to
just
ask
say
you something,
something?
guys? Can I ask you
There was something that
Yeah.
Jason. I just want to comment on what Jason. A very long comment, and he asks so many questions. And Jason is right in the sense of saying the system is failing us.
Let me ask our producers to bring it back. There you go.
Yeah. So the system is failing us 100% right, Jason. Because you know what? Let's talk about an example of South Africa. You have universities like Sefako Makato University, universities that were built post 1994. They were built after independence. So you'd expect those universities to be transformational, to bring new knowledge, bring new access. And you have got an African government which can put funding into this. But every parent wants their child in South Africa to go to UCT. They don't have confidence in Sefako Makato University. This is the decolonization, because firstly, a person thinks about the name of the university and says, can I trust this name? That's why, Paul, you are in Quebec, and people are saying, this name, some people say, we don't want it. So we need to learn that. I just wanted to give my 2 cents worth of that question that Jason had given.
Yeah, I think I just want to say that we need the needs for us to embrace our own is really important. It cannot be overemphasized, because that is why those institutions you were talking about, that's why they can not be changed, or the change can take longer than we might want it to, because there is still that thing where they say, our things are not superior, we can't be superior, the white man has to be superior. That inferiority complex has to go, because right now I don't see why our education, like in general, we are taught mainly to remember things that are already there. We are not taught to create our own. We are not taught financial education. We are not in the school. We are not taught all those things. We are not taught those critical thinking skills, self-love. We are not taught self-love. And we are forced into submission to just follow what is already there. If you say something, you are regarded as rebellious. So there is really a need for this is this issue. It might not be a black and white issue. It's a many color kind of issue, where we need to really sit down and say, okay, what do we have? What needs to change? What do we need? Because before we start to embrace our own, before I start loving my family, I cannot love other people. Do you see where I'm coming from? I have to start by loving myself. I have to start by loving my family, embracing my family before I go to the neighbors. So Africa as a whole.
I want to hold you there. I want to hold you there, because right now I am looking at my clock and it's ticking, and now it's turning red. So before I have to make you guys fast check and rap like Eminem, your last thoughts. Be ready. I will start from Stan and Wow, and then C. I want your particular closing argument, if you can call it that, to focus on decolonization. of education. I'll start with you, Stan.
So my starting point, Paul, will be that decolonization starts with you. As at home, as a parent, as a child, think about it on your own. How many African languages can you speak? When you identify yourself as African, how much proud are you to show your Africanness? When you reach a place, how much pride do you have in showing what Africans can and can't do? That's, for me, that's the starting point. Secondly, it's knowledge sharing and passing on of information. That is particularly to us Africans. When you meet people who are out of Africa, or that you don't regard as African, teach them about Africanness. Teach them about what we do in Africa. I was talking to a colleague 2 days ago who is in the UK, and they had World Social Work Day, and they said at work, I ran a workshop of teaching people in the UK about Ubuntu, which is an African principle. What does Ubuntu entail? What does this system mean? Lastly, to what of also, one of the comments which was talking about embracing ourselves, even the African culture, what does it say? Is capitalism African? If capitalism is African, is Ubuntu then African? How do we balance this? So bringing those forms of sharing, where to say, although yes, your children can be learning in economics to say price is determined by supply and demand, but you need to also teach your children at home to say, although you might have a higher supply, but you must have a heart to understand that this is becoming too expensive to my neighbor who needs it. Thank you.
Are you running for office, sir? Because the way you're closing sounds like you're really trying to run for office in the future.
So I am saying vote for Stan.
Oh, wow, go for it.
I think we lost Hawaii.
Okay, I think Hawaii is experiencing some technical difficulties. See if you're ready.
Okay.
Hawaii, just hold it a second there. I'm going to
Okay.
give you a chance to reset again and say exactly how you started it.
I think
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So to wrap it up in a nutshell, basically is what Stan has said and what we've been saying from the onset is we need to support ourselves. We need to have this self-belief and self-confidence in the African and everything African, from the certificate to the institutions, because basically we place more value on international certifications than even our very own. And charity begins at home individual, because we are all the leaders of tomorrow. So it starts from us, and then from there we can take it up.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, okay, we are Africans. Let's embrace our African art. Let's love our art. Let's love our food. Let's love our languages. Let's love ourselves. Let's love even when we are traveling, let's travel within Africa. Let's learn other cultures within Africa. Let's learn other languages within Africa. Then we can start saying, okay, we can start seeing or where and how we can actually go about decolonizing our education, because we are tired now of saying, okay, let's not embrace the British, the English, using it as an official language. I should have been able to say something in Yoruba, or something in Shangani or Xhosa. So that is my thought on decolonizing Africa. We need to embrace our own. Let's elevate our own. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. And just before we go, I would just want to add that it is your responsibility to come and like our Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all over. We're all over social media. Why am I saying so now? Because this is where we're having these conversations. We want to continue with this one way after today to say how can we decolonize Africa's education. Any day you bump into this video, feel free to leave your comment and your suggestions on how this decolonization of education can work. What we're waiting for from today is a body of young Africans who send submissions, even through to us. Like, I have a paper that deals with it that I wrote. How do I get this to the relevant authorities? Let's stop just having it as a conversation. When we sit under the baobab tree, after we converse, we've taken it upon ourselves to get up, take whatever you send through to us, and look for the necessary channels and channel it into the right direction. From the Baobab Chats team, to you all, thank you for being on the show. Until next week, it's bye-bye for now.